Welcome back. In the last video lecture, we have seen about what a day-ahead market and what an hour-ahead market is, and what are the different participants and what they will be doing in this day-ahead and hour-ahead markets. And at the end of the last video lecture, we have discussed something about the factors which basically govern this MCP. One is supply, the other one was the demand, right? So based upon these two factors, the markets are normally classified as elastic markets. So one thing is what actually this elastic market and inelastic markets are, and what is the impact of elastic demand on MCP. I hope that you will be able to explain this concept after the end of this lecture. So I will start with elastic and inelastic markets, and then we will move on to what is the impact of elasticity of demand on the market clearing price. So before going any further, let us have a quick information on inelastic markets. So inelastic markets are those markets which do not provide sufficient signals or incentives to a consumer to adjust its demand in response to the price. So before going any further, let us have, as an electrical engineer, you might be knowing about this demand curve, right? So this is hour and this is demand. You know the demand curve, how it will be. It will be like this, right? So when you are expecting the demand curve like this, an electrical engineer is not supposed to have this type of ups and downs in a demand curve. What he needs is nothing but he needs a very flat curve. So which will be helpful for him to improve the efficiency of the entire power system. So which means that what you are asking this entire demand to get pushed into this area or to this area in order to flatten the curve. So why do the demand goes into these curves unless you provide any incentives, right? Let us suppose if a customer like me, I don't want to change my demand into this off periods. Let us suppose this is before 6 a.m. So why do I want to shift this thing? So unless you provide me any incentive. So if you are providing incentive, then I may think of shifting this demand into this particular region. So any market which basically does not provide any sufficient signals or incentives to a consumer to adjust its demand, it is called as inelastic markets. So if you are providing the incentives, it is called as elastic markets. Now in this video lecture, we will see what is the significance of these elastic markets. So in elastic markets, we will discuss first about inelastic markets, where you don't receive any incentives if you want to adjust your demand. So if you don't receive any incentive, the customer will not have any motivation to adjust its demand, isn't it? So in that case, only MCP is determined by supply itself. That we will see in the next slides. So the advantages of this one is the loads will be very firm, they won't be adjusting, so you can analyze the system very easily. But the limitations is that the customers have no choice or intention. They don't intention. And one more limitation is that the demand curve will be just like this. So the overall efficiency will be decreasing. On the other hand, in the elastic markets, the consumers will be provided incentives to adjust the demand. So what incentives to customer? So this gives customer a choice to decide on his electricity expenditure. If he doesn't want to move, if he wants the demand only at that duration of the day, then he may have to pay higher price. If he moves to off-peak load regions, then automatically he may get a reduced price. So customer has a choice to decide on his electricity expenditure. So in this case, both the demand and supply will influence the MCP. And what are the advantages of this one? Customers will schedule their loads based upon the pricing of electricity because you are providing them an incentive. But the problem is that you don't understand how the loads are being varied. So the loads can be fluctuating as they depend upon customer intentions. We can't predict what is there in the mind of a customer, right? So it becomes a little bit complex when you are forecasting the things. Having discussed these things, now we will have a quick look about how this elasticity will affect the MCP. Now let us suppose this is an accumulated supply curve, where if you carefully see up to this price 0 to 9.9, the supply is this one. As you increase the price, then more supply will be coming into the market, right? At higher prices, everybody wants to grab a chunk of it, right? So as the price increases, the suppliers will pour in more amount of electricity into the market. So everybody wants to gain this higher price. On the other hand, if you see, the accumulated demand is independent of the price. So because the customers are not provided any incentive, so they don't vary their demand when there is any price change. So in that case, see, this is the supply curve, and see the demand curve. Demand curve is just very parallel to the price curve. So because irrespective of the price, when you are not offering any incentives to the customers, they won't change the demand. So this is the demand curve. So this is your MCP. What is MCP? 30 rupees is the MCP. And see, what is the market clearing volume? 400 is the market clearing volume. Now what happens when you offer them an elastic demand? See, at lower prices, if you offer them incentives, then automatically the demand will be higher, because these people, they will be shifting to lower prices. At higher prices, then automatically they will reduce their demand, which means it may be the peak hour. So in this case, where the demand is varying with respect to price, now you will see the same supply curve earlier case. Now what you are doing, you are adjusting your demand based upon the prices. See now, what is the MCP? It is somewhere around here, right? It is somewhere around 25 rupees, I think so. And this is the market clearing. It is somewhere around 220 or 240. See, earlier case, the MCP was 30 rupees. Yeah. See, this is the case. This was, what was this one? It was 30 rupees in the earlier case in case of inelastic demand. So in case of elastic demand, what is the price? It is somewhere around 24. So what is the impact? What do you have understood now? If you adjust demand based upon the prices, which means if you provide an elastic demand, then automatically MCP will be reduced. It's no matter that MCP also will be reduced, but this indicates a very stiffness, a very competitive market. Okay. Now, there are some cases where if you are providing elastic demand, then there are some cases when the demand exceeds supply in inelastic markets. In an inelastic market, let us have it quickly. So this is an inelastic market. Sometimes what happens is your demand will be very high, 700 megawatts, and these people are not ready to adjust because you are not offering them any incentives. But the supply is very minimum, at 650 only, the maximum available supply. So in this case, if you draw the curve, see, there is a gap between the supply and demand. This is called as a supply demand gap. So in this case, how will you determine the MCP? Because MCP is the intersection of these two curves. So there is no intersection, which means that MCP may lead to infinity. In this case, the independent system operator, he comes into picture. So he finalizes the MCP at some reasonable price. What we call it as a market cap. He will introduce a market cap. So in this case, it is 40 rupees, right? He will go with some 45 rupees or 50 rupees. And he will keep a cap there in order to control the prices. This does not reflect any competition in the markets. So this should be avoided. So what are the reasons for the gap? Unparticipated increase in demand, which could be due to the weather. The demand is very high, or sometimes supply may be coming too short. So in either of these cases, you will be having a gap. So what is the impact of this gap? Electricity price spikes. MCP will go to infinity. In that case, what you should do? What is the action to be taken? Price caps is the best thing. Otherwise, if the prices go to infinity, nobody is going to get anything, right? So price caps can be imposed by the pool or the ISO. Either of one can control the prices. Why? In order to limit the prices. Now, how to restore these things back? So if the supply is low when compared to the demand, you should shed some demand. This will make the intersection of these supply and demand curves. Or otherwise, you should bring in additional supply sources, what we call it as reserves. In either of these things, you can restore the system. So if you are exclusively implementing this concept of price caps, what will happen now? It will not reflect the two market situation in terms of both availability or unavailability of supply, or the willingness of a market to pay a higher price for energy. So that's why we shouldn't incorporate these price caps, because it is anti-competitive in practice. Now the third one is unexpected supply outage in elastic markets. What happens? See, now let us suppose this was the initial supply curve. Now suddenly what happens is there is a supplier has expressed an inability to supply power at 80 megawatts in this price band of 25 to 29.9. So which means in this region, this guy has expressed his inability. So instead of moving here, my price is still at 240. So 80 megawatts has been slipped out. If you carefully see, I will be having a very reduced concept of reduced generation. So in this case, this is my supply. What is happening now? See here. This is the original supply curve, and this is due to with outage the supply curve. If there are outages there, then automatically what happens? Earlier case, this is the demand. So what will happen if there is an outage? Earlier it was this MCP, it was somewhere around 25, but because of this outage, it is somewhere around 30, if you carefully see. So any outages, sudden outages automatically will increase the MCPs, and that is to be countered by the independent system operator, either by bringing in additional generation resources. So it is the role of independent system operator to do every job in order to control the market clearing prices. So what is the impact on elastic markets? MCP is controlled either by supply or demand. The better thing to show the competitiveness in the market is that you employ proper practices. So don't try to incorporate price caps. It is an anti-competitive thing. If there is any sudden shortages, sudden outages of generators, you should bring in more reserves. Okay. So the conclusion is that the elasticity in demand is always beneficial in keeping the MCP lower. Okay, that's it. I hope that now you are able to analyze the impact of elastic demand on the MCP, and I hope that you are now able to answer this particular question. What do you understand by elastic markets, and what are their advantages? They offer us lower MCPs, and what is the impact of elastic demand on MCP? You should explain me with an answer, with a detailed case study. Thank you.